Welcome to the Dave Williams Wealth Advantage. Commentary for marketplace heroes, high achievers, entrepreneurs, and business leaders connected with the Great Commission. Now here is award-winning, best-selling author, Dr. Dave Williams.
Welcome. On today's program, we'll look at 8 scriptural foundational premises for building wealth. We know that to attract wealth, we must have a solid theology concerning that topic. In other words, what does God say about wealth? It all begins with a sound theology of wealth. That's the foundation for a good psychology of wealth, which in turn leads to a legitimate perspective on wealth. And once we establish our wealth perspective, we can move to developing a philosophy of wealth and then progress to building an action plan for wealth. But it all begins with God and His view on wealth. So I want to give you 8 foundational scriptural premises for the subject of wealth so you are established in what God says about it. Number 1, lack and poverty are not God's will for you. Deuteronomy 2:7, no lack, even in desperate circumstances. Poverty is a satanic principle. John 10:10 and 1 John 3:8 teaches us that Jesus came to undo stealing, killing, and destroying. Therefore, to resist prosperity and abundance is to resist the will of God. Number 2, God wants you blessed with wealth and actually has pleasure in your prosperity. Psalm 35:27, Deuteronomy 8:18, Ephesians 3:20, Hebrews 8:6, Luke 4:18. Number 3, no believer has a money problem. We discussed this on a previous program. You may have an obedience problem, attitude problem, knowledge or know-how problem, or a vision problem, but by covenant you don't have a money problem. As long as you see lack as a money problem, the problem will only increase. Number 4, God has given us a plan for radical wealth in His Word. He spells it out clearly, gives the cautions against greed, covetousness, and hoarding, and tells us what His purposes really are for wealth. Genesis 13, Abraham, the father of faith, was very rich. Genesis 20, verses 14 to 15, talks about how our mistakes do not hinder God's wealth covenant. Mark 10:30 tells us that when we become wealthy, it's going to be with criticism and persecutions. And Psalm 112, 1-3, it says if we're righteous and generous, and the only way we can be righteous is through Jesus, that wealth and riches will be in our home. Number 5, wealth that God gives is not contingent upon the economy, quarterly earnings, stock market interest rates, or economic indicator. In John 21, we find the disciples fishing all night and catching nothing. Jesus from the shore speaks a word, they obey, and suddenly they catch a boat-sinking load. In Exodus 12, 35-36, we find wealth coming to God's people in one day. Matthew 6:33, if we seek God's priorities first, then all these things shall be added unto us. It doesn't say this will only happen, however, if the market is good or if the economy holds up. No, it's a promise. Number 6, consumer debt has the potential of bringing multiple curses on your financial life. Read Deuteronomy 28, and you'll find $1 in debt today can cost you over $600 in future buying power. You say, well, it's only 4% interest I'm paying, but think of the interest and growth you're losing by not being able to invest that 4% you're paying in interest. If you take the time to figure out, you're really potentially losing 12 to 20%, which could be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars over time. You're sacrificing your future to enjoy something now. Why do God's people go into deep debt and have financial lack? Pride, the mother of all sin, is one of the top issues. 1 Peter 5:6 says, humble yourself and God will exalt you in due season. You can live in a decent 2-bedroom home and drive a decent used car, but you choose something far beyond what you can afford to pay simply because of pride. So you sacrifice your future and a lending institution gets your wealth. Number 7, God has given His children the power, not the skill or talent or education, but the power to get wealth. Deuteronomy 8:18, Ephesians 3:20. The amount of wealth we enjoy will be according to our management of the wealth He entrusts to us now. Matthew 25. It doesn't seem fair, but Jesus said more will be given to the better manager, even though he doesn't seem to need it more. The one who obeys radically and plants radical seeds will be blessed radically and will reap a radical harvest. 2 Corinthians 9:6. If God didn't want His children wealthy, He wouldn't have given them the power to get wealth. Number 8. God has an overriding purpose for prospering His children. The gospel, the kingdom, the establishing of His covenant in the earth. In Haggai, people's houses were falling apart and they weren't experiencing good harvests. And when things weren't going right for them, the prophet reminded them that it was because they were putting their own plans ahead of God's purposes. Let's just recap those 8 biblical premises for wealth before we go. 1, lack and poverty are not God's will for you. Number 2, God wants you blessed with wealth and actually has pleasure in your prosperity. 3, no believer has a money problem. 4, God has given you a plan for radical wealth in His Word. Number 5, wealth that God gives is not contingent upon the economy, quarterly earnings, stock market interest rates, or economic indicators. Number 6, consumer debt has the potential of bringing multiple curses on your financial life. Number 7, God has given His children the power, not skill or talent, to get wealth. 8, God has an overriding purpose for prospering His children, and that is the gospel, the kingdom, the establishing of His covenant on the earth. Now, it's up to you. God gives the seed to the one who will plant it, and everybody has something to plant. Isaiah 55:11. And God gives the power, Deuteronomy 8:18 and Ephesians 3:20. And then 1 Corinthians 3:7, God gives the increase. I'm Dave Williams reminding you that you must activate the power to get wealth through faith plus action, which equals obedience.
Dave Williams is the author of Coming into the Wealthy Place and The Road to Radical Riches. We have several resources available in print and on audio media. Our web address is davewilliams.com. We look forward to hearing from you and be sure to join us for the next Dave Williams Wealth Advantage.